Hello, everyone, and welcome to Connected with Jen and Shannon, where storytelling meets transformation. I'm Shannon, a communications trainer and coach.
And I'm Jen, a speech-language pathologist and academic. Here's where leaders in neuroscience, philosophy, spirituality, and the arts come together to share personal stories of transformation and powerful strategies for connection, and reimagine what it means to be fully human. Today, we have an amazing guest. What better way to introduce Cherise Adjodha than as the queen of good works and inherent goodness? She started her career at the Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs and Oxfam and worked later in the World Bank and the UN. She is an expert on human development and the human experience, given all of her experience in life.
Cherise is amazing. She radiates this joy, and it's amazing because she's seen so much suffering in the world, but yet you'll see how she just radiates that joy into the universe.
Cherise did something very interesting in this show. She redefined for us what it means to be a good little girl. Because let's face it, we're all still wrapped up in being a good little girl, even though we're well into adulthood. So I would just call this the good little girl syndrome. We carry around how we're supposed to be in the world with guilt and shame really often. We act out of guilt and shame. I should act a certain way because it would be terrible if I didn't, rather than acting out of compassion. So she wants us to live differently and be driven by compassion instead of shame.
Right, Jen? I mean, this good little girl narrative is going to end right here, right now, right? We've been thinking this way for so long. It's really about people pleasing, I think, when it comes down to it. And Jen, I know one of the very first activities we did together was this personality kind of assessment. And Jen and I both raised our hands when it came to people pleasing, right? So this is something that we need to consider and really think deeply about ourselves. So when we were little, we would sit up straight, we would do our homework, and that defined our own self-worth. Right? So when we can remove that allows us to really grow. It really allows us to be present, and then life emerges from that.
And another thing we've been thinking about is being a good little girl changes from the time you're young to you're a teenager to when you're an adult. So it's like you can never get there. We're constantly moving the goalpost. So if we remove that judgment and live with compassion, as Cherise tells us, maybe that's really going to help.
And yes, Jen, we're always moving that goalpost, but what we're also doing is always moving, right? We are always doing so many things, getting more degrees, more charity work, reading more books, being a better mother, whatever it means to you, right? Society and culture says that is the way we define our own success. But here's the thing. Cherise asks us rather to just be, right? Be present with yourself and other humans. And when you can really make that human to human connection, life begins to flourish.
And flourishing is what we want to do. Cherise talks a lot about positive psychology, and that makes me think a lot about resilience. A lot of the work out of positive psychology is based in resilience and how we bounce back from challenges. And bouncing back and flourishing and thriving is very different from living from moment to moment, moving constantly and worrying about judgment.
When we can release ourselves from judgment, right? Everything changes. I noticed Cherise talk about these kind of micro actions of connection. And she talks about every person she meets, every being she meets, she really tries to connect with that other being. And that really transformed the way her day goes, right? At the end of the day, she's feeling joy. She's feeling happiness because she has been making connections all day long, right? She didn't have to sit and do a 60-minute meditation. She just had to go outside in her neighborhood and look her neighbor in the eye and smile or say hello in whatever way is called for at that very moment.
And she has a name for that, right? From her native St. Lucia.
Yes, she does. She calls it catching a glad, right? She says, when you can catch a glad, ride that wave.
So let's all catch a glad with Cherise during this episode. Thank you all for coming today and listening, our beautiful listeners.
Feeling lost in the noise of social media? Inspo cuts through the clutter, connecting you directly with real insights from real experts and industry leaders. It's a new social network dedicated to knowledge sharing, industry insights, and thought leadership. Get the latest from top minds in your field, or build your own thought leadership portfolio on Inspo. Already trusted by thousands of professionals worldwide, be part of the conversation and download Inspo Experts today on the App Store or visit www.inspo.expert.
Cherise, it is so wonderful to have you here on the show. You are such a beautiful human being, and we've had the opportunity to meet you in person, of course, but learning more about you from your work, from your books, from the videos that you make, from your blogs, there's so many facets. You're so wonderful. I have a quote of yours, and I would love for you to talk a little bit more about it. You tell us you're about catalyzing human connection within self, others, and our planet through life-sustaining embodied thought and action. I love this. Could you tell us more about it?
Thanks so much. And thanks to you both for having me. This is such a wonderful gift. And thank you for asking about this, because I gave a lot of thought about something that I could put together that would kind of sum up my way of being in the world, but would be expansive, not something that would limit me or limit anyone who was taking it in. And so the important word there in the beginning, catalyzing, is really just about supporting a process, supporting something that others are wanting to amplify, not imposing, supporting. And yes, I do qualify it in the context of connection. And I think that fundamentally living in connection with self, others, our planet, all the other beings on the planet, that is really the way to live. If I had to be prescriptive, it's the most prescriptive thing you could say that's not a prescription or an order or a how-to or a, just we are born of each other. And so why not have that intention to want to experience it and be it and amplify it? Why not amplify connection? Why not catalyze connection? And it's the kind of thing that all of us do just by loving. It feels expansive to me when I say it. And the embodiment part is also about connection for me. So embodiment for me in the context of living system sciences is about a kind of cognition that is planetary wide, where it's not just your body, it's our body, it's one body. And it's not a pseudoscience thing, it's an actual thing that every manifestation on this earth is inter and intraconnected. And so embodiment and any doing and being that comes from that, if in full connection, I think is just, yes, inherently responsive, meeting the needs of those around us. It's authentic, it's from the heart, it's present moment, and it's being first and doing after.
I love this topic. I'm so glad you brought it up. The idea of being here, right, in this present moment, rather than what we're programmed to do, right, is just the doing, more. When we can just stop and be, right, that's where the magic happens.
Absolutely. It's where the magic happens, and it's where doing comes from a place of truth, and where doing comes from a place of what's truly needed in that. Not something that we have a preconceived idea about. What's actually here? What's actually in this moment? So if you can't be first, then you don't really know what that is. You're just working on an assumption of what could be or what should be.
That's so hard for us. I think we've talked about this with a number of our other guests. I'm thinking of Donnie McClurkin, in particular, Roger Walsh. Slowing down so we can be. We're always in this place where we need to speed up and do more. If we can slow down, it seems that assists us in the being. What are your thoughts on that, Cherise?
I think that slowing down is so important, but underneath that is, for many of us, the reality that the opportunity to slow down can be quite a privilege. Being able to think about being and not doing is such a privilege because doing is attached to ideas of survival. It's all about some view of existence and how tied we are to human systems that demand we do certain things so that we can literally buy food, so that we can literally clothe ourselves and our loved ones, so that we can literally have a safe place to be. And so I recognize when I'm in a space to talk about that for some of us, we really have to think about what we can slow down just to give ourselves permission, because we're so terrified that if we stop, how am I going to put that food on the table? How am I going to find the time to do the things that I require for survival? What thing is going to fall apart? So slowing down is important. It's also a way of being in the world that we have to be able to give ourselves permission to be. I guess we can test it in small ways. And so when I talk about this, my sense is, okay, for the most part, we're in survival mode all the time. We feel really threatened by the idea of stopping or slowing because we think something's going to fall apart. Where is there just a tiny bit of room that we just tested out? And this is where having a sense of curiosity can play a good part in helping us to find room. I'm just curious, what if I just slow down this one thing? Can I risk it? And then you'll find out that slowly but surely, there's more spaciousness and more spaciousness and more spaciousness. And that spaciousness gives us opportunities to find other ways of existing, other ways of being and doing. And hopefully it can ease up some of those pressures that we think we're constantly having to react to.
I love that you brought up fear. People have fear. I have fear to just slow down and see what's right in front of us.
Yes.
And the point that you're making is so important. We talk about slowing down, right? That is a privilege. A lot of people are feeling like they don't have that in their day. They don't have that time because, they're paying the bills. They're, raising their kids. So if we can kind of eliminate that fear, we might be able to actually see what's going on. Because fear is not something we want to be working with.
The thing about fear that's so interesting to me that I've discovered over the years from being someone who is doing the 12 hours in the office and, getting up every day and getting out there and the whole nine, the clothes and the this and the that and the whole persona, which I enjoyed in many ways, but also realized how much I had to prime myself just to live that life. And what fear looked like then was, there are just certain things you got to do if you want to get this. I'm not afraid. I'm just doing what's required. I'm just making things happen. But you don't know that underneath that is a fear that if you don't do that, everything's just going to fall out. The bottom's going to fall out. What will I do? Who will I be? Where will I go? How will I survive? What other choices can I explore beyond what I'm told is available to me? If I stop believing that this is how the way the world is and this is how the way the world works, how else will it work? How else will it be? And where will I find a way to survive in it? So fear, I think, manifests in the form of conditionalities that we have. Conditioned love is built on fear. Conditioned truth is based on fear. Conditional everything is based on making sure that you have some kind of limit or else.
Cherise, this makes me think of you and your life. So you've made some big shifts in your life. You were working 12-hour days. You had a big job at the UN. You've worked with the World Bank. You've made big changes in the world. And now you've made some interesting shifts in your own life. So if you don't mind me asking, how was that for you to make that change, which may have been at one point fear-based? Do I need to stay in this? Can I make changes in a different way?
So that answer is born out of, I think, what has been driving me since I was little and had me end up in those spaces in the first place. Would have been at a really young age. And I talk about this in my book, Things I Would Have Told My Children If I Had Them. What is a good human being? What is goodness? And what will make me a good human being? Why do I want to be a good human being? Why do I want to do what I think is this service for the world? Where is that birthed in me? I got involved in the UN space and worked briefly for the World Bank, and then with the World Bank in the UN space, just on this idea that I was in a place that was making change, that was in service, and it was fulfilling that idea of goodness, which was both a desire and a question and an action and a state of being, all in one. It meant so many things, and realized that, I suppose, from that perspective of being and doing, that there was so much doing happening that wasn't coming from a place of beingness. And that in many ways, there's an implicit understanding that we are in a complex system, that we are working with complex living systems, that we need relational thinking. Now talking circular economics is really in. We know that this is required, but then the systems are so encumbered. And here you are working all of these hours, and there's so much demand. Workplace culture is not particularly healthy. And you realize that, and certainly for me, working as a technical person, a program person, most of that pressure wasn't responding to an immediate need. It was responding to the needs of the bureaucracy. It was responding to the needs of the donors on top of the bureaucracy, and it's not that we weren't doing good work. At some point, I realized that the work wasn't that joined up, relational, interdependent thing. And so the 12-hour days really felt like work. It didn't feel like that seamless service. And I was exhausted, and my colleagues were exhausted. And the conversations you have for, 2 years and 5 years and 10 years, they're always the same. They don't change. And the places that you're doing work, you're still there and still there and still there. And somehow all this money is put in, and what's going on? And everybody's talking about being exhausted like it's a badge of honor. And people's marriages are falling apart, and they're estranged from their loved ones. And, you're rushing to the gym and pushing yourself. And at some point, I just thought, well, we know it's not healthy and it's not sustainable. But what really shifted for me was coming back to that question of goodness and service and meaning and purpose, and recognizing that this interpretation of me, I talk about the interpretation of my grandfather in the book, and just how people viewed him against this checklist of goodness. So this interpretation of when you work at the UN, you're this type of person who's trying to eradicate poverty and stop violence. And I thought to myself, if this is my reason for living and what gives me meaning and purpose, it means I really need people to be suffering to feel a sense of purpose. I said to some of my colleagues one day, I said, guys, if we know we're living in a capitalist society and that therefore, literally when I have, someone doesn't. That's literally what it means, because it's extractive and depleting and competitive and arranged in hierarchies of power. If we're here afraid to be poor, if we're afraid to be impoverished, then we're literally willing that on someone else. And if this is how I get my sense of meaning and purpose, then I literally need someone. If my goodness is dependent on me having to be some kind of rescuer, then I need people to be suffering, to be in pain for it. And I just couldn't abide that would have been my trajectory in what is a good human being? Is it contingent upon saving someone from their misfortune? Is it contingent upon being in a position to be able to help? Right? So that therefore I know in the system, if I'm in that position, then someone is not. And I knew a change had to happen. I knew that the means is so important. Process is so important. The beingness from which we do is so critical, because there was so much of this dissonance in the doing that the outcomes, look at the world, the outcomes are just full of that dissonance and upheaval and tension and struggle. I knew I needed to be someone different. This decision that I made to get out was literally, I had no idea what would become of me, but there was one thing in my consciousness. And I had this sense of being a good human being actually is linked most tangibly to having a direct experience of being human. That thing that's not conditioned, that thing that's not programmed, that thing that's just clear sight, not trying to give myself meaning and significance and purpose, but experiencing what is there, what am I, how am I, and then being a good human being is really just being good at being human.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just this wide open space. What does that mean to me now? What's it going to mean to me in 5 minutes? And I'm just being human right now. And this is that link. I make that link in that same chapter in the book to authenticity and just being present. Let's see what emerges. Let's see all those spaces in me that are now open and not closed, and are not constantly afraid of failing, of losing, of being on the streets, of, being one of those people who don't have the worst things. Can I open myself up to being human if it means that the worst things I can imagine might happen? That I would feel the worst kinds of pain, that I would be seen as weird, which many people came to see me as. Can I risk it? I dare you, Cherise. I dare you to just be nobody and nothing and leave the thing that everybody thinks makes you impressive and worthwhile, and have no plan and no idea of what's coming next. Can you do that? And I think what I will just say before I leave that is, it's not that those spaces aren't full of beauty and laughter and people really doing their best. The people in those spaces are beautiful people. And where they struggle with their own beauty, similarly to me struggling with mine, is the recognition of what those systems and structures around us, how that contained us. So it's not them, it's that structure around us that limited so much how we could experience ourselves, how our work could evolve, how we would experience our broader lives. I think people really want to be well-intentioned, and it's not everyone that can just give themselves the space to say, you know what? What would happen if I didn't have any of it?
Resonates. And Cherise, Shannon, these are literally ideas that I have never encountered before. These,
Yes.
can I just, I know you have a question and I have to say these two things.
Go for it, girl.
That these notions of being a good person, two things in particular. One is that, and I've always thought this, and Shannon, I know you've always thought this, I'm a good person if I can help people who are suffering. That makes me good. And what you're saying, Cherise, is something I've never thought before, which is that implies that people must be suffering. People must be suffering, and I must be in the position then by some grand gift that was beyond me that allows me to be in the position that I could help. And that's not a good enough definition of a good person. It's not. That is something I'm going to have to continue to mull over, but that is something I felt very comfortable with in my life to this point until you just made that absolutely incredible statement. And the other piece of it, I have to say this, is what if being a good person was just being good at being human in that wide space of what is possible, of what a human is like blowing my mind. It is blowing my mind. Both of those things together, you're incredible. Those are incredible. Those are incredible. And we might have to just leave that there and start a new topic, Shannon. I needed to share that those pieces were really resonating with me.
Thank you so much. I can build on what you said, because being a good human in that moment, what is it? You allowed yourself to feel compassion, empathy, and to share. And the reason why I think we conceptualize goodness the way we do is because we're initially taught goodness, morality, ethics with social sanction attached to it if you don't. So it's a kind of enforced goodness. And so you're a good little girl if you sit and you're quiet. And if you're generous, that's good. And then we could tie it to people thinking well of you, you being rewarded socially. Religion has this built in as well. You know who's going to be chosen, who's going to be in bliss. And I think that at some point, that idea of a kind of community ethics or sense of goodness was derived from living in connection with nature that didn't have to be enforced and spoken in that way. But that we have come to a space in life where we're in this stage where we think that enforcing goodness is the path to a kind of peace in society. Of course, it's not, because it's not sustainable and it's done with force. and it's done with control, and it doesn't allow us to experience being human because we already have this list of tasks that will get us approval, that will bring us to God, that will make life easier in some ways. So you don't get a chance to just experience actually that you are just a beautiful, loving, good person because you're a human and you have this infinite, incredible capacity for empathy and compassion and love that doesn't have an end. It doesn't need someone to threaten you with candy or, you know, you are that. You are that. You are that. And so the question is, what things, say, children might do that we say that action is bad, as opposed to, well, what are you feeling right now? And let's think about how that response is affecting others. How we can work on a response that all of us can feel cared for and nurtured by. When we go from having these, words and concepts that mediate action to being in full embodied awareness, then you don't need to enforce goodness. Children, then, for example, and us, we're in tune with what the most nurturing, connected response is. And we're already in that space of just embracing all those very normal human emotions that come up, that sometimes there's turbulence and dissonance within us because we feel threatened. And if we have an opportunity to work through that, then we learn how to navigate things that scare us without doing bad things, as opposed to never getting there, never really experiencing that opportunity to really just be in tune and navigate our own scary landscape and have that shut down and just have this list of things. You are a bad person because you did this thing. The end. I'm
But that's not the end.
No. Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Sometimes it's a matter of the system is imposing, right, this black and white sort of thinking where it has to be one way or the other. And if it's anything in between, right, we're going to throw that out. It's the system that is giving us the language that is limiting what we actually are able to do.
Absolutely. And the thing about things that happen in human systems that is destructive, it's fragmented. And so you have this stimulus, you have this response, mechanistic. This is why we feel so easy to feel like we're machines, because we've literally been conditioned that way. Stimulus, response, stimulus, response. If we allow it, we'll see that being is emergent, because your mind is not going to be calculating all of that stimulus and information that's coming into your embodiment from the entire planet and the cosmos and telling you da 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 da, and therefore, here you go. Take action. It doesn't happen that way. What happens is when you're in that state of connection and awareness, when you're open, then it's emergent, the compassion. It's emergent, the empathy. It's emergent, sometimes that state of fear that's saying, oh, you got to run because something is coming up behind you and you need to head that way. All of those things, right? And all of those are absolutely useful and inherent to us. Inherent to us as a living organism that has many living organisms within us, and we're living within living organism and within all these living systems and within and within and within. It's built in This is how come life is inherently regenerative. This is how come creativity, all of those things are just emergent. So this idea of morality, this is also emergent in connection. You don't have to try. You don't have to think about it.
You know what this makes me think of is, or compare, right? You're mentioning emergent-based compassion. It's within us as humans. It does emerge from us rather than kind of like a shame-based compassion, like you have to act this way. You'd better be compassionate or else. And they're completely different things, and they feel different, and they probably enter into the world in different ways.
Absolutely. And I think this is something that is going to be a bit disturbing to hear. But when we have these emergent ways of experiencing a moment, it is not, you can feel suffering for the world, you feel suffering for yourself, you feel those things, but there's a lightness in it. It doesn't come with an immediate existential threat that's just, you're just going to drown in, you know? It comes with a sense of peace. It comes with a sense of rightness of a moment, solid, grounded, knowing.
Could you give us an example of a moment where something like that may have happened for you?
Experiencing first the guilt of having more than someone who I see who's clearly struggling. And I can't abide it. It cuts me. The next meal I have, I will remember them on the side of the street or in a parking lot, dirty, hungry. Having that guilt burning in me, and at some point asking, but that person, Cherise, this guilt you feel, it's you've made them helpless. You've made them a victim. You've made them weak. Is there a way that I can hold that and feel a sense of buoyancy, that I can be in connection with this human being who's clearly actually so strong, such an incredibly resilient human being who dares to go on, who dares to look me in the eye and be as they are, who dares me to confront my own fear of existing as they do. How can I feel compassion and empathy and not reduce them to, oh, this person that makes me feel guilty, and I just want to get rid of this feeling of guilt, and therefore I'll get rid of this feeling of guilt by just giving them some money, or then it's all about me. Then it's all about me and me making myself feel better about that guilt. And I want to feel better about my own fear of ever being in that situation. How can I restore dignity to that moment and not make it about me and do what's required? Is it that I needed to buy them something to eat? Is it that I need to just smile and say hello? What's required? If I can just get out of my own way about that. And it's not to dismiss that I feel it. It's to recognize and have compassion for myself. I know it sounds cliche, but also I struggle with having a sense of peace when I see others in pain. It really does destroy me. How can I experience that in its own light and not attach it to guilt and shame and blame? And therefore, proceed from that. Here is this pain, this suffering. Let's be with it together. Let's see what the next step is.
This is such a heavy conversation that we're having. It's also a very real conversation, and I welcome it. The thing that I'm hearing from you is, it's when you can recognize that guilt for what it is, right? Try to let it go, try to change it into something else. Then the humanness, that lightness, reveals itself automatically, right? It allows for that space that we're living in to totally change how we see that person who needs food, right? Or that person who needs a place to stay.
And recognizing the guilt also gives us an opportunity to give us that same compassion and care.
Yes.
So, right. So I have this thing in my head, when we learn at school, you have to balance each side of the equation. If you add
Mhm.
one on one side, you have to add one on the other side. And I think, okay, let's not pathologize my response. I see it. This is where I am. In the moment, maybe I will just say, what is it that you need? Do you need some money? Do you need some food? And I make a choice and I recognize what happens in me then, what arises in me then. It's possible that you can observe that arise in you. And then that is enough to anchor you, to be brave enough to invite what's required, not to just hold on to that pre-written list of responses that will make me good, will make me feel better, will make me feel like I've done the right thing.
Mhm.
So holding ourselves with care. That human guilt thing is here. That's real too. Guilt is a pain as well. That's coming from somewhere. It's coming from a sense of unworthiness. I'm not worthy of this privilege. Look at this person suffering, Cherise. Why do you have what you have? And so now in meeting myself there, I can say, well, I want everyone to have as I have. That's the goal. It's not for me to be punished.
Mm.
It's for all of us to live in that abundant spaciousness. So let's cultivate some joy right now, Cherise. Let's put a smile on. Don't add any more misery by being miserable. And let's see if we can, amplify something positive. Sometimes the pep talk works and sometimes I just feel awful, but I can see where it is. And I can say, you're worthy of the comfort and the love that you have, Cherise. You're worthy of it. You're worthy of it. And that person is worthy of it too. We're both worthy of it. We're both worthy of it. We're all worthy of it.
Yes.
I love what you're saying about cultivating joy. And maybe that's a part of an answer of a question that I had earlier. How you make decisions in that moment. I hear what you're saying about me immediately want to say, oh, well, I see this person, they're suffering. And in my mind, I sometimes reduce them to their suffering. And then ultimately, I'm making this experience together about myself when I feel guilty if I'm not giving them some food or giving them some money. And that's something I definitely need to interrogate and observe on my own within myself. And I hear what you're saying about cultivating joy brings more to the world of what I want for myself and for this person. But in that moment, how do I go about making a decision about how can I know what the right thing to do is when I see someone who is suffering?
So for me, I often, because this is something that affects me so strongly. I often don't know what the right thing is. What I've noticed about myself is, first of all, make sure that I always treat those people with respect. The cultivating joy piece happens to be built in now, for lack of a better phrase coming to mind. And I'll smile and I'll say, hi, ma'am. Hi, sir. Hi. And whatever choice I make, sometimes I will judge them and I'll feel like, oh, why are you bothering me? I see you here every day, because that's the other side. I see you here every day and someone just bought you a drink. I can't manage. I just can't manage. There's that other side of it. And I'll find ways to escape myself. Can I meet them with respect while judging them? So for both responses, whether I'm feeling that, I can't bear this, I can't bear to see this person, I feel so guilty, but good afternoon, good morning, hi, how are you? And that arising, that emerging as a natural state now, alongside the other things. That emergence now is the doorway. If you're gonna find some spaciousness, it's the first door, because meeting a person as the Buddhists say, everyone you meet, Buddha, 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 Buddha. I'm not better than you. You're not below me. We are the same. And I meet you here, Buddha, and maybe you're really annoying me. It's true, but maybe I'm just angry at myself. Maybe I'm frustrated in that moment. It's my frustration at all of the human systems that cause deprivation are imposed upon this person, right? Again, about me. These human systems that create this suffering and this pain, and I can't deal with it. All of that is imposed on this person. But if there's going to be a moment where there's any light, it has to be in how I meet them. And it's not just about them. And so I would say, as something ingrained in me now, you meet everyone. Buddha, Buddha, Buddha. This is something that started as a practice and became a way of being. And as I observe my responses to people, my reactions, as I become more aware of all the stuff I'm putting in the moment, there's more spaciousness at the end of that greeting. And we can greet each other without words. When of that presence of someone else and meeting that presence with reverence is enough. Acknowledging the sacred being here is enough.
It's that human to human connection, right?
Absolutely.
In that 1 second, you know exactly what it is, and that other person knows exactly what it is, right? You
Yes.
connect at a human level. We're not just talking about words, or the way I look at you, right? It's the way I feel about you. And, when you can make that connection with another human, there's nothing like it. I mean, Jen and I talk about connections all the time, right? Our podcast is called Connected because life is born out of relationships. I can't do this living thing on my own, right? I can't do this podcast thing on my own. But when I come together with Jen, that's when the life is really made, right? That's where the meaning making really happens. Perfect segue, right? Maximize the joy. And that radiates from your being is joy. And you've seen so much suffering in the world, right? Sometimes the brightest light is born from the darkest realities.
Yes.
And maybe that's why you're able to kind of radiate this positivity and joy that you do. And it also, a lot of the work that you do deals with seeing the best in someone, right? When you meet that person, trying genuinely to look through the physical being, right? And straight to the heart of what someone is, right? Their authentic self, that light that makes them shine. When you can connect with someone positively, right? That's a pretty good start if we're trying to relationship build. So it's not often about fixing the other person, right? Or fixing ourselves. It's more about just kind of being with what's there. So positive psychology asks a different question. It's what makes life worth living, right? Not what can we fix about our lives or the lives of somebody else.
Yes. So for me, the applied positive psychology course that I ended up taking happened after I decided that I needed to have this direct experience of being human. Whatever that is, I have no idea. And I ended up taking this course realizing that it was in alignment with what I had self-taught myself about complex systems thinking and the reality that in an interconnected and interconnected world, you don't just look at problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution. And that our way of approaching psychology has been very much about pathologizing behavior, looking for disease. The applied positive psychology approach, which is sometimes quite narrowly expressed in certain programs and then more expansive in others. For example, I've followed the work of Dr. Tim Lomas, who has an expansive model that he calls the life model, where he places positive psychology interventions within the context of all of the human systems and the biosphere and that whole integral understanding of self. And it's this incredible integrative model of really actually, yes, it's about strengths base. It's about amplifying what's positive. It's about, and not positive as in, oh, that sounds good and happy, but really, if we're in full connection, this is about an awareness of not creating externalities that are negative, these unforeseen things that we just didn't take stuff into account. Positive psychology has been taken to that level of, regenerative thinking and living systems thinking and awareness, where we understand that any intervention we make is done in full connection with the environment that we are in, with the people that we are in, with the community surrounding, and including our own being. Really sitting with myself. What here needs more love? Not what needs to be stamped out, what needs more understanding? Where do I need more clarity? And this for me was, okay, open. You can broaden and deepen, deep and wide, completely interconnected. And I'm sure that there are other practices that do similar things, but I would say we found each other this thing, because I was in that space where I was just, what am I going to find online? I have some ideas. I don't know. Remind me of my name. I have nothing to do. And I shopped around a bit, and then I saw, not pathologizing everything, not making everything look like a problem to solve. What a relief, because I can't remember the last time I looked around me and didn't see something wrong or a problem or some kind of misery. So, that I wanted to fix, to solve, to sort out, to get rid of right away, with no respect for what it would look like for the actual process of that, right? Because you lose sight of so much when you're just diagnosing a problem and fixing it. Very mechanistic. It was just so expansive for me.
In one of our conversations that we had on the podcast with Sanjay Manchanda, of course, who we know from Blue Sky is amazing. And he says that the thing traditional psychology misses about this conversation of consciousness, right, is the meta step. The meta step. So the conversation of consciousness, this one that we're having here, kind of allows you to step outside the system, right? Whereas traditional psychology is kind of focused within the system and about fixing.
The applied positive psychology course I did also was so broad and deep with that, exploring consciousness, exploring embodiment, exploring connection, exploring the interconnection of all of those states of being. So it's an actual model that is divided into categories that are clearly interlinked. And the practices and tools that you find in that space are brought in from a lot of different places, of course. Nobody's reinventing the wheel. What we're doing is focusing on the things that will amplify the joy and amplify the strength and amplify the beingness. And so, I did nonviolent communication. This is something that's not new to us. We have a lot of wisdom that was born out of the 50s and 60s and 70s with psychology that was about wholeness, that was about really not making others invisible, that was about communicating in a way that connected us. High quality connections is a thing that emerges in positive psychology. And so a lot of it sounds pop psychology-ish. Concepts are like that. I did a quick course, but it's part of meeting everyone as Buddha. Can you have a high quality connection with someone that you're just passing in the supermarket? The person at the checkout? And this is something that when, you read things like, if you are 1 foot away from someone, you say hi. If you're 5 feet away, you smile. I started doing this. And I was a grinning fool, but I feel so wonderful. And people started saying, "Oh, your smile. Thank you." But this smile just kind of popped out of me. And it comes to me and rescues me from myself every day, And so it's like, oh, I don't have to sit and do this really intensive practice and get down on myself if I don't make it. I'm just leaving my apartment. There will be a person or a chicken or a dog, and let them the same way. I nod and I wave. And I acknowledge the trees and just all the beings around me. It's a lovely experience. And that alone has opened up so much for me, that one practice.
I worked in healthcare many years, and when I found this positive psychology skill, this tool, was in the middle of the pandemic when everything was so awful in healthcare. It was just so hard. And every person that would pass me would say, "What on earth are you smiling about?" They think something's wrong with me because I have this joyous way of being. And every person that I would see in the hallway, I would try to look at them in their eyes and at least smile, right? Connect with every single person that I would see in my 8-hour day or 12-hour day, like we're talking about, Cherise. These long, long days where people were suffering, I still found a way to find joy. And it changed my entire way of being. When you can meet somebody with that joy. And it doesn't have to be like positive psychology as, oh, everything's so great. The world is perfect, because that is not the case.
That's not what it is. No.
That is not what it is. It's not just me being, oh, so light and jolly all the time. It's actually me just being aware of what's right here in front of us, right? This beautiful being that might be sick or might be sad or might be happy. Just that awareness that we are here together in this one moment. And then guess what? The reaction is a smile. This is what is born from that kind of thinking. So you don't even have to do anything, right?
Exactly. And I would say also that I can't remember what chapter in the book this is in, but at some point in thinking about beingness and the shoulds of how we should be and making decisions about others and othering and how we other ourselves and censor ourselves even and just asking that question, but who do I want to be in this moment? And surely, regardless of whether or not someone wants me to smile, it is who I am being, it is who I become that matters. That is the measure of my experience. That is the measure of my humanity. And if that smile can emerge for you, this is the measure of your humanity. And people say a lot now, how are you showing up? And at first I thought, hearing that, well, do people mean that superficially? The analyzing mind was just going and going. And I thought, this is it, Cherise. How are you being in this moment? And if that person is sad, sharing that authentically can also be healing for someone else. And so not performing your emotions, not performing a feeling, but really sharing that experience of it. And so it's not the thing that we're feeling or the way that we're being. It's just, am I performing this to get us a particular response? Is it going through a conditioned frame? Or can I just be here in this moment and meet my colleague and just, this morning is rough. Just honestly, just as honestly and beautifully as, I feel joyful today, amidst everything. There's a saying on the island that I'm from, St. Lucia, I catch a glad. I catch and sometimes I'll just be sitting here at my desk and I will just feel this joy well up in me and I will say out loud, "Ooh, I catch a glad there." And I will just ride that wave, I will just ride that wave and I'll be like, yeah, gladness. And, you can just have that. The universe, the cosmos, nature doesn't need a reason for you to be joyful. It doesn't need a reason to give you that. You just have that. You don't need it. You don't need a reason for it.
Cherise, this has been amazing, by the way. It feels like we've been here 5 minutes and we've already been here over an hour. So thank you for that.
Yes. Cherise, the time has come. We ask all of our guests the same question nearing the end of the interview. And it's your turn now. It's your turn. Here's our question for you. If your vision for the world could be limitless, what would be your new bliss for the world? So basically, what would that perfect world look like to you?
So the one straight kind of sentence, which is very common and cliche, is, I just want everybody to be in love all the time and give themselves permission to do that, And I feel like the most transformative force in my life right now is just literally being in love. My soulmate from my childhood, I met him when I was a child and fell in love, resurfaced in my life a few months ago. And all of that talk, the girl talk, that's the don't lose yourself and it can't just all be about him and da 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 da. And I'm just like, I'm lost It's all about him. I don't have to worry about that because you know what? It's all about me for him in many ways. And he reminds me to take care of myself. And he reminds me not to lose my dream. And he reminds me. And so just having that trust that you can abandon yourself. I mean, really, just abandon yourself to it. And in that, I would say my last underbelly of that, the part of that is, I wish people could just give themselves permission to be human and just get rid of all that judgment. Ugh, that voice that's just on you, on you, on you, on you all the time, telling you, don't do this, do that. This is right. This is wrong. This is wrong with you. This is wrong with so-and-so. This is that thing. That thing. Yeah. It wasn't until I let that voice get really quiet that I could just allow someone to love me. Ladies, what do you think?
So Cherise, this glow that you have, so obviously it's in love. She's in love. That's what it is all about. It's the glow of love.
It's the glow of love. It's the glow of being loved like I've never been loved in my life. And so much so that all the love in my life is now big, 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 big. You know, I have had the most tumultuous time moving here. I've moved 4 times in 6 months, and there's so much uncertainty, and I experience stress a lot. And then somehow this love around me, I can feel it lifting me through. I can feel it. I can feel it because it comes with, I believe in you, Cherise. I'm in awe of you. I want everything for you that you want for yourself. I can't imagine life without you. Please be here with us, you know? Yeah. And I'm just saying yes, 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 thanks. Yes, thank you.
Well, that attitude gives you radiance and it is contagious. My heart is open with love after this conversation. And we're very grateful for that. Thank you so much. So
Thank you so much.
as we wrap this up, we want to ask all 3 of us here to come up with one word or phrase that we're going to take with us from this conversation. So I think I have mine, Jen. I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
Humanness is the word that just really is living for me right now. Humanness. This whole conversation has just been such a human one. We have had love, we've had compassion, we've had empathy, all of these emotions. It's just so obvious, right? When you let go of all the judgment, what's left is just 3 humans here together experiencing life together. And that's how I felt this last hour. So thank you for that, ladies.
Oh, that is beautiful and perfect.
Mhm.
And mine is very similar, actually. This is a Cherise quote. I've got to look at my notes here. Because I'm obsessed with Cherise's idea of this being a good human, right? Because let's face it, we all wanted to be good little girls.
Yeah.
And we find ourselves in adulthood just keeping on wanting to be a good little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And Cherise, your notion of being a good human is actually being good at being human is something that I am going to be thinking about all day long. So thank you so much for bringing that today.
So thank you both so much. I do feel so transformed by this experience, and it's been an incredible sacred gift to me. I literally burn to share, and you've given me flight today. My word is a cheat. I'm combining words. So it's peaceful gratitude. That's peaceful gratitude. Peaceful gratitude. And really that gratitude being filled with a kind of deep silence and connection and emotion. I will cry when we get off this podcast. Just to
You
having
know
felt
it's a good podcast when,
When.
right at the end, we're all in tears. We're like, I love you, Jen. I love you, Cherise.
I love you so much.
So that's how we know it's been a successful podcast. So we all have this lovey-dovey feeling of connection, which is the goal. That's what we're trying to create here. So ladies, we have done it. Thank you, Cherise, so much for your time. You have been so generous with your time and just, sharing with us who you are. And I know that everyone listening to this is going to relate. And, there's someone out there who needs to hear this. So thank you so much for helping us bring this to the world.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much, Cherise. We loved having you on.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, everyone, we have something really important to ask, right? Jen and Shannon are over here trying to save the world, and we need your help.
This is how you can help us. Go to Spotify, go to Apple Podcasts, go to YouTube, and hit like and subscribe. And let us know what you think.
And here's the thing, we're building a community, and this is the first step.
We can't wait to see you there.